Dust spiraled where boots dragged her forward. Rough hands gripped her arms, pulling her into the sunlit square. Clara Mayfield stumbled, dirt clinging to her torn dress. Laughter cracked across the air, sharp as a whip. "Hold her still," one of the men barked. His voice carried the same bloodline as her late husband, but colder, stripped of mercy. The crowd did not speak, only shifted, eyes flicking away as if shame itself might stain them. The barber's razor glinted silver in the noonday sun, trembling only from heat, not hesitation. Clara thrashed once, twice, but her wrists were bound by rope. The coarse hemp dug into her skin until it bled. She met their gaze, her husband's kin, her so-called family. Cruelty sat easy in their faces. A hiss filled her ears. Metal against scalp. Locks of brown hair drifted down, gathering in the dust. Each strand seemed louder than the jeers, louder than the hawks circling overhead. "Widows got no place in our name." A woman's voice cut through, sharp with venom. "No place but the ground." Clara closed her eyes. The world tilted. Sun bore down, hot enough to crack stone. Her hair fell in clumps against her chest before sliding into the dirt. Children gawked. Men chuckled low. Someone spat. The last pass of the blade left her head raw, pale skin shining where pride had once been. They shoved her to her knees. A boot pressed between her shoulders. She coughed as dust filled her throat. Her scalp burned for more than the sun. "Look at her," one of the in-laws crowed. "Nothing but shame now. Nothing at all." The crowd broke, muttering, shifting back to chores, to wagons, to the slow crawl of frontier life. But the silence they left behind cut deeper than laughter. Clara's chest heaved. The rope fell loose, cast off like trash. She didn't rise. She couldn't. Not yet. Her eyes blurred with grit and fury, with the weight of a world that had no use for a widow with nothing left. Then boots stopped beside her. Heavy boots, cracked from years of trail and stone. A shadow fell across her body. He did not belong to them. His stance said as much. Broad shoulders beneath a dust-worn duster, hands knotted with veins like old roots. His face was carved by time and grief, beard streaked gray, eyes dark beneath the brim of his hat. The laughter stilled, though no word had been spoken. He bent, slow as if considering the weight of what he was about to do. His hand, scarred and weathered, reached for hers. The gesture was plain, unhurried, yet fierce in its defiance. "You're coming with me," the rancher said. His voice carried like thunder rolling low across the desert. Clara lifted her gaze. The sun burned her bare scalp, but his shadow shielded her eyes. Something in the air shifted. Men who had mocked her now found their mouths dry. The rancher did not wait for answer. He hauled her gently to her feet, steadying her against the tremor of her legs. His grip was iron, not unkind. A hush spread wide across the square. Even the wind seemed to pause. The in-laws sneered, but none stepped forward. Their cruelty, so loud a moment before, faltered under the steady stare of Jedediah Boone. For that was his name, known once in whispers and in ballads sung by men who never wanted to meet him face to face. He led her through the crowd, step by step, past faces turned aside, past shame burned into silence. Her scalp glistened with sweat and humiliation. Her dress hung loose, frayed where fingers had torn it. But each step away from the square, each stride under the weight of his protection, was a step that carved itself into memory. At the edge of town, where desert wind met the wooden bones of old fences, Clara turned once. The square behind her seemed smaller, meaner, nothing but a pit of dust where she had been broken. Jedediah Boone did not turn. His gaze fixed forward, toward the canyon lands where shadows stretched long and the horizon bled into fire. She followed, because there was nothing left behind her but ashes of dignity. Ahead, perhaps, something else waited, though she could not yet name it. And the old folks say, when they tell it by lamplight, that the town never forgot the sight. A widow stripped of all she had, walking beneath the scorching sun with her head bare and her pride reborn, beside the rancher who would change her fate. The gate screeched on rusted hinges as Boone swung it wide. Horses whinnied from the corral, dust rising under their hooves. Clara's boots scraped the hard-packed earth. Every step felt like trespass. The ranch spread before her, scarred and weary as its master. Fences leaned with age, boards split from sun. The barn sagged against the weight of years. Coyotes called from the canyon rim, their cries slicing through the cooling dusk. Boone dropped her bundle on the porch. "Inside," he said, voice rough from disuse. His hand lingered at the revolver on his hip, though no threat stirred. Habit, not need. Clara's scalp burned with every shift of wind, raw and stinging. The boards creaked beneath her as she crossed the threshold. Shadows pooled in corners, lit only by a single lantern. The air smelled of leather, smoke, and old sorrow. He moved like a man who'd lived alone too long, silent, deliberate. A chair scraped against the floor as he pushed it toward her. "Sit." She sat. The rope burns on her wrists throbbed in time with her heartbeat. Boone poured water from a clay jug into a tin cup, set it before her. His eyes lingered a moment, steady, unreadable, before he took the chair opposite. The silence grew heavy. Only the night insects sang, and the timber groaned as if remembering storms long past. At last, his voice broke the stillness. They had no right. Clara's lips pressed thin. Her hand curled around the cup, but she did not drink. They took what I had left. Boone's gaze dropped, shadow hiding the sorrow carved deep into his face. Loss has teeth, bites deep, leaves scars no one sees. She looked up sharp. "You speak like a man who knows." The lantern flame wavered. His hand flexed on the table, knuckles white. "I know." The words carried weight heavier than iron. He stood, turned to the window. Beyond the glass, the desert stretched endless, stars beginning to pierce the purple dusk. His reflection seemed older than the man himself. Clara's voice trembled, though her jaw held firm. "Why bring me here?" He faced her again, slow. "Because shame don't belong to you. Not today. Not ever. They tried to bury you. I won't watch a good soul rot in their dust." Her throat tightened. The water remained untouched, though thirst ached in her chest. Boone lit a second lantern, set it near the hearth. Its glow revealed the walls lined with tools, bridles, ropes, rifles. All worn, all kept with care. A man with no family, yet a house prepared for company that never came. "Tomorrow," he said, voice steady again, "you'll work." Clara blinked. "Work? You'll ride. Mend fence. Learn to fire a gun if you have to." His eyes locked on hers. Shame don't last long once hands are busy. Her lips parted, then closed. The baldness of her head, the ache of her scalp, the sting of memory, each throbbed against the thought of lifting a rifle, of gripping reins. Yet something in his tone rooted her to the chair. Outside, wind rattled the shutters. A horse snorted restless, stamping against the dark. Boone's hand drifted to the revolver again, unconsciously. The weight of memory pressed close. Clara found herself speaking before she knew the words. "What did you lose?" He froze. His shoulders stiffened beneath the duster. Long seconds passed before he turned, eyes dim with something older than grief. "A wife," he said at last. His voice scraped like gravel. "2 children." The silence returned, thicker now. Clara's breath caught, but she did not press. His gaze was fixed not on her, but on a place far behind her, as though ghosts lined the walls she could not see. He shook himself once, as if casting off chains. "Enough talk. Rest. Tomorrow begins early." Clara rose, the chair legs screeching across the floor. She followed him down a narrow hall to a room small but clean. A bed stood against the wall, quilt folded sharp. She touched the fabric, rough, hand-stitched, bearing patterns faded by time. Boone set the lantern on the dresser, then turned without another word. His boots echoed down the hall until only silence remained. Clara lowered herself onto the bed. Her scalp pressed cold against the pillow, the absence of hair a reminder sharp as a knife. She closed her eyes, but sleep did not come. Outside, coyotes howled again, their cries weaving with a whisper of wind through canyon stone. And there, in that lonely room, shame smoldered into something else, something harder, sharper. The desert pressed against the windows. Her chest rose and fell with breaths that would not break. When dawn cracked the horizon in a blaze of red, Clara stepped outside. Boone was already in the corral, saddle slung across a restless mare. He glanced once at her bare head gleaming in the morning light, but said nothing. He tossed her the reins. "Mount." She stared at the horse, breath catching in her throat. Her palm stung with old rope burns, wrists raw. Yet she tightened her grip on the leather. The mare shifted, restless, but Clara swung up, unsteady at first. The saddle creaked under her weight, the sky stretching wide and merciless above. Boone watched silent. His eyes narrowed, as if measuring more than her balance. She straightened her back, fingers digging into the reins, and for the first time since the square, her chin lifted. The wind caught her scalp, cool and fierce. It no longer felt like shame. The mare's hooves struck sparks on the hard road as Clara and Boone rode into town. Sunlight caught the steel of the rifle slung across her back. Eyes followed her, whispers curling low like snakes in dry grass. "The bald widow," someone muttered. Another voice snickered, "Boone's charity case." She did not lower her gaze. Her bare scalp gleamed in the noon light, not hidden, not bowed. Children stared wide-eyed. Women looked away. Men smirked behind calloused hands. Boone rode steady at her side, jaw set, his silence heavier than any defense. They dismounted outside the general store. The bell above the door clanged as Clara stepped inside. Dust sifted from the rafters, mingling with the smell of tobacco and grain. The shopkeep froze mid-count of coins, his eyes tracing her shorn head before darting nervously to Boone. "We need supplies," Boone said, his voice clipped final. "Sacks of flour, ammunition, salt pork." The goods stacked high on the counter. Boone paid without haggling. His eyes swept the street through the window, watchful, measuring. Clara felt it before she saw them, her in-laws across the street. 3 men, 1 woman, leaning against the hitching rail, faces twisted with contempt. The eldest spat into the dust, lips curling. "Reckon she thinks she's a cowboy now," he sneered. Clara stepped from the store, her arms full of provisions. The words pricked her skin, but she did not stop. Boone shifted closer, hand grazing the butt of his revolver, and the sneers faltered. They rode back under a sky swelling with storm clouds. The first strike came at night. The barn doors banged open, flames leaping wild across dry timber. Horses screamed, their eyes rolling white in terror. Smoke poured black into the sky. Clara bolted upright from her bed, the acrid stench searing her lungs. Boone was already moving, rifle in hand. "Get the stock," he barked. She ran barefoot across the yard, skirts catching sparks. Heat scorched her face as she grabbed a frantic mare's reins, yanking hard, pulling the animal free of the blaze. The barn roared like a beast in its death throes, sparks scattering into the night. Shadows darted beyond the fence line. Muffled shouts. The crack of a pistol. Boone fired into the dark. A figure stumbled, clutching an arm, before vanishing into the sagebrush. Clara dragged the last of the cattle clear. Sweat stung her eyes, smoke clung to her skin. The barn collapsed in on itself, timbers shrieking as fire devoured them whole. The attackers' voices carried back through the smoke. "The land's ours. You'll be bones for winter." Silence returned, broken only by the crackle of burning wood. Clara's chest heaved. Boone lowered his rifle, eyes narrowing against the night. "They'll be back," he said. Clara's hands still trembled on the reins, but her voice did not falter. "Then let them come." Dawn broke crimson over ash. The barn lay in ruin, smoldering embers hissing in the dirt. Boone stood surveying the wreckage, shoulders rigid, jaw tight. Clara joined him, her scalp raw from smoke and heat, but her back straight. "They wanted to break me," she said. Her voice was low, almost a growl. "They'll find I'm not the same woman they shamed." Boone turned, studying her. His face softened, not with pity, but with recognition. He nodded once. That day, she did not rest. She rode fence line until her thighs burned. She practiced with the rifle until her shoulder ached from recoil. Boone corrected her stance, adjusted her grip, silent but watchful. Each shot cracked through the canyon like thunder, each miss narrowing, each strike truer. When she faltered, he spoke. Revenge burns fast. Justice lasts longer. She looked at him, sweat dripping down her face. And which do you live by? He did not answer. His eyes lingered on the horizon, where storm clouds gathered thicker still. That night, wind tore through the canyon. The shutters rattled. The fire snapped sharp in the hearth. Boone sat polishing his revolver, the metal gleaming cold in the lantern light. Clara sat across from him, cleaning the rifle with hands steady now, calloused by work and fire. The silence stretched. Finally, Boone spoke. Years back, I thought myself righteous. Took 10 men in a feud. Left them dead in the dirt. Thought I'd carve justice with lead. His eyes lifted to hers, dark and heavy. But when it was done, the hole inside me stayed. My family was still gone. Clara's hand froze on the rifle barrel. His words sank deep, lodging against the smolder in her chest. Don't walk the road I walked, Boone said. His voice was gravel, worn from regret. Hold fast to what you're building, not what you've lost. The lantern hissed. The storm wind howled like wolves at the door. Clara set the rifle aside. Her eyes did not waver. I'm not after revenge. Not anymore. Her words hung sharp, defiant like the cut of a blade. Boone studied her, then nodded once. 3 nights later, riders circled the ranch again. Their torches flared against the canyon walls, firelight dancing across rock and sand. Clara stood on the porch, rifle in hand, breath steady. Boone joined her, his revolver holstered but ready. The riders did not attack. They shouted promises into the night, their voices echoing cruel across the stone. This land is ours. We'll take it with your blood. Then they rode off, their laughter trailing like smoke. Clara lowered the rifle. Boone's hand rested on her shoulder. They're testing your fear, he said. Clara's lips curved, not in smile, but in something harder. Then they'll find I have none left. The storm clouds thickened above, lightning flashing across the desert sky. And the old storytellers say, when they speak of that night, that the widow and the rancher stood together in the storm shadow, knowing the reckoning was close, their hearts already written into legend. The sky burned red as the sun cracked the horizon. Shadows stretched long across the canyon floor, carved sharp by stone and dust. Clara stood on the porch, rifle gripped tight, the chill of morning clinging to her bare scalp. Hooves thundered from beyond the ridge. Dust plumes rose like smoke from an army of ghosts. Her in-laws rode at the front, flanked by hired guns, their laughter hard and cruel, cutting the silence before steel or fire had spoken. Boone stepped out beside her, revolver low at his side. His shirt clung dark with blood from the wound at his shoulder, bound only by a strip of cloth. His face was pale, but his eyes were steady. They're here, Clara said, her voice firm, though her chest heaved with each breath. They always were, Boone answered. The riders spread wide, circling, filling the canyon with the sound of snorts, spurs, and creaking leather. Guns gleamed in the rising light. Her brother-in-law leaned forward in the saddle, teeth flashing in a sneer. Step aside, Boone. The land's ours. The woman, too. Boone raised his revolver. Come take it. The first shot cracked like lightning splitting stone. Dust leapt from the ground at Boone's feet, but he did not flinch. His revolver barked in reply, the bullet cutting down the nearest rider. Chaos erupted. Gunfire echoed in waves, the canyon ringing with the thunder of death. Horses screamed, men shouted, bullets whined and spat sparks against rock. Clara ran to the fence line, dropped to one knee, and leveled her rifle. The recoil slammed into her shoulder, but the shot flew true. A rider tumbled backward, his body striking the dirt with a dull thud. Reload! Boone called, his voice ragged, but commanding. Smoke filled the air, sharp in her nose, bitter on her tongue. Clara's hand shook, but not with fear, only with fire. She worked the lever, chambering another round, and fired again. The in-laws pressed closer. A bullet ripped through Boone's hat, grazing his temple. He staggered, but steadied himself, revolver flashing again and again. 2 men fell, their cries swallowed by the storm of gunfire. Clara's world narrowed to the iron sights, the pull of the trigger, the crack of the shot. She rose, moved along the fence, and fired. Another man pitched sideways from the saddle. Then the eldest in-law charged forward, his pistol aimed straight at Boone. His horse thundered across the yard, dust trailing in its wake. Boone turned, raised his revolver, too late. Clara stepped out, rifle raised. Her voice carried above the storm, cold and sharp. "This ends now." The shot rang out. The bullet struck true, tearing him from the saddle. He hit the dirt hard, the pistol falling useless from his hand. The yard fell silent. The gunfire stilled. Smoke drifted on the morning wind. The remaining riders pulled back, eyes wide, faces pale. One by one, they wheeled their horses and fled, dust clouds trailing their retreat. Clara lowered the rifle, her breath ragged. The world around her blurred with smoke and silence. Boone stood watching, his revolver hanging limp at his side, his eyes fixed on her, not in surprise, but in something deeper. She stepped forward, her boots crunching in the dirt, until she stood over the body of the man who had stripped her bare before the town. His eyes stared glassy at the rising sun. She looked down, her scalp burning with the heat of dawn, and did not look away. Boone's voice broke the silence. "Justice." Her chest rose and fell, steady now. "Not revenge." He nodded, blood dripping slow from his bandaged shoulder. Together, they stood in the quiet ruin of battle, the desert wind whispering through the canyon. By nightfall, the ranch lay still again. The dead were buried beyond the fence line, their markers plain, unmarked. The cattle grazed calm, the horses whickered low. Boone sat on the porch, his arm bound tight, watching the horizon. Clara worked in the yard, stacking the last of the rifles they had gathered from fallen hands. Her scalp caught the moonlight, pale and gleaming, no longer a mark of shame but a crown of fire. Her body moved with strength carved by work, her eyes sharp, unyielding. The townsfolk came in days that followed, word carried faster than wind. They saw the ruin of the barn, the fresh graves, the widow who walked straight and tall beside Boone. Whispers turned to stories, stories to legend. And the old men say, when the tale is told by firelight, that the widow never bowed again. They say she stood bareheaded in the dawn, rifle smoking in her hands, and the men who tried to break her name fled into dust. They say the rancher's words carried through time, thunder on the desert wind. "You're coming with me." And she did.